Have you ever stopped to think, who really is my greatest enemy? Is it myself? Is it my neighbor? Is it my government? Is it some combination of all three? Unsound Mind is a psychological horror game that asks us exactly this question while simultaneously answering other questions that our psychiatrist protagonist Desmond Wales failed to answer for himself before all hell broke loose. This game follows Desmond Wales, a psychiatrist who has had several of his patients suddenly die in ways that, if you have any kind of background in psychology, this would be immediately raising some red flags for you. Desmond finds himself at the scene of what seems like an apocalypse. Water is flooding the streets, strange fumes are filling the air, all the doors have locked, and there is something or someone inside this building. You are met with strange noises, stranger sights, and even monsters are filling the halls. Despite these disruptions, Desmond has only one goal in mind, and that is to find out what's happening to his patients, or what has already happened. Each patient seemed connected in some way or another when Desmond started digging into their files, and so he's going to find out exactly what that link is. Now we've reached the part of the video where I will give our typical spoiler warning. If you haven't played this game, I'm about to spoil most of the main plot for you to really dig deep into what happened during this game. During this, please leave a comment if there's any other game you would like to see me break down or play next. Desmond has 4 patients that come to mind with these recent events that all seem to be affected in some similar way or another. So next we're going to really get into what each of those patients experienced, what their file looked like, and what they may have experienced after the sessions. While Desmond finds himself trapped in this mysterious building that also seems to be his apartment building and his office, I don't know how they rented out the rooms, this is where we are. Desmond also finds tapes for each of his patients that contain recordings of their conversations during their sessions. Each tape seems to act as a door that will open up to each person's session, and it will give you not only the recordings to listen to, but also a very vivid graphic depiction of what has happened, mentally and physically, to each of the patients. Our first patient to discuss is Virginia. Virginia suffered from severe anxiety and self-esteem issues due to being exposed to pageants at a young age. I think we all have a friend who, was part of pageants and shows and stuff at a young age when they may have not necessarily wanted to be, but their parent just thought that they were the cutest kid on the planet, and so that's where they belonged. Virginia had a horrible accident at 6 years old, right before a pageant. An event occurred that led Virginia to grab onto a standing mirror and pull it on top of herself, which then shattered. The shattering glass sprayed and cut Virginia all over her face, leaving horrible scarring and her permanently disfigured. Despite the accident and the awful injuries, Virginia's mother still insisted that she should perform in this pageant. She promised Virginia that no one was going to judge her and that she was still pretty. She was still a cute little kid, and she still should go to the pageant. Virginia did not want to do this. This constant struggle back and forth with her mother, and her mother insisting that she's still beautiful and that no one would pick on her, instead of just comforting this child, led to a lot of self-esteem anxiety issues for Virginia. Virginia, as well as the rest of the patients, grew up in a small town named Milton Haven, and to add on to her traumas and discomfort, the town also began to see a little bit of growth. And through this quote-unquote growth, as part of this growth, a large chain grocery store by the name of Homomart had come to town, and this unfortunately shut down the local grocery store that Virginia was so used to going to. It was part of her routine, part of her comfort zone, that was then ripped away from her by this, large grocery store coming in and ripping away the small town normalcy. And with these things in mind, and going into Virginia's tape, we start to learn a lot about what may have happened to her. We find ourselves in a Homomart that is now in disrepair and looks like the remnants of a ghost town. We also find in this Homomart a wandering wraith or ghost, as it would appear, that we have dubbed the Watcher. The Watcher gets their name due to the fact that they cannot stand being looked at, and if you, the protagonist, looked at her, she will immediately attack you. To fend her off, you find different mirrors to which you force her to look into, which then slowly breaks her down and she becomes non-hostile. While non-hostile, you do approach her and you tell her,
"It's okay. I see you. You can rest now."
Thank you.
Once this ghost has passed on, we get to the end of this tape. And the end of the tape gives us the information that Virginia has unfortunately committed suicide by cutting herself with a piece of glass. This occurred in the Homa Mart, and it is thought that possibly Alan, which is the next patient we will talk about, may have seen this occur. So what we've learned so far is that this exposure to this Agent Rainbow, or this chemical, or we actually don't know at this point what exactly it is, whatever it is, the exposure to it combined with the existing mental illnesses and traumas seemed to heighten those symptoms and led this victim to commit suicide. Our next patient's tape that we'll be looking into is Alan, who is also dubbed the Shade. Alan had schizophrenic and hallucinogenic tendencies, leading him to see shades or shadows and monsters. And despite already sleeping with a light on, Alan eventually moved to a lighthouse to live in it and maintain it so that he could help others always have light, because he too was afraid of the dark. Alan also had some psychotic symptoms that would show by the fact that he mentioned to Desmond really kind of enjoying the fear sometimes. He enjoyed being in the dark while also being afraid of it simultaneously. In Alan's tape, we find ourselves on the beach side with the lighthouse directly above us with a glaring red light that seems to actually be doing damage instead of helping people. And Alan, or the Shade, we do find later kind of depicted as this shrunken, burnt up imagery of a man who is burning things around him and you if he gets too close, but is also scared of the light now, which is very odd. It's something you really kind of take note of. It's like, okay, Alan really liked the light, and now this version of him hates it. And it's something we start to see in these Agent Rainbow cases, is that they turn into the opposite, or the worst version of themselves. We find out that Alan had been trying to contact Desmond because there was a pretty significant turn of events next to the lighthouse where the USS Thanatos crashed into it, and this ship seemed to contain large amounts of chemicals. The chemicals were not stated, and on the lists and documents that you find, everything is redacted. It's all hidden, right? It's all covered up. But when the crash occurred, Alan, being the type of person he is, did go down there to see if he could help. And unfortunately, when he was helping, or attempting to, he was exposed to a large amount of Agent Rainbow, and this chemical exacerbated his symptoms, which made him see more and more monsters. And when he was at his shack at the bottom of the lighthouse, the monsters seemed to be swarming him. And so what he did, because he figured, oh, the only way to fight darkness is with light, he pulled out a flare gun and shot it at these monsters in the house that he saw. And unfortunately, the house caught fire, and Alan was caught inside and is now in a coma. And at the end of the second tape of Alan's, we tell Alan,
It's okay. The ship, the fire, those weren't your fault. Whatever this chemical is, it's gotta be the source.
I don't want to be afraid anymore.
And due to the USS Thanatos crashing into the beach side, the water was contaminated with this chemical that they had a large amount of on this boat, which seems to be that Agent Rainbow that we were talking about earlier. And it has now infected the town's water supply, likely leading to this domino effect of people dying and the patients having the problems that they're having. On to the third tape. This is going to be Max, aka the Bull. Max is seen with potential intermittent explosive disorder and narcissistic tendencies. Max was not at his psychiatry appointments by choice. It was decided for him in a court because he had a domestic issue that led to the separation of him and his wife and the removal of custody of his daughter. It was determined for Max that he now needs to seek therapy and get an okay from a mental expert before he can see his daughter and they can move forward with the trials. In Max's tape, we find ourselves in the Quarry. The Quarry is a pretty important piece of Milton Haven, as it was a mining town and most of the small town's income and jobs were involving the Quarry. The Quarry, though, did slow down over time and was eventually bought out by Mayor Pharmaceutical, who then hired Max on, as Max was a driver for the Quarry previously. But Max unfortunately had an accident and ended up having an issue with his first drive after years and years of a perfect driving record with Mayor Pharmaceutical, thus leading to his unemployment. The unemployment did in fact exacerbate his issues by making him even angrier, and thus he came into contact with a man named Lucas. Lucas we will talk about next because he is our fourth patient, but he and Lucas decided to go back to the Quarry and Lucas had reasons to be there that we will discuss. Max wanted his job back, or to make someone pay for it. We do find Max in his alternate form in the shape of a bull's head that is also a large flying vehicle, but he is also just trying to run into you and everything else around him. So really just kind of showing off that blind rage, really leaning into his anger issues and the, intermittent explosive disorder. Max eventually has to be sedated with something called a cattle lure pill, which is used on him as a sedative to calm him down, which is kind of an unfortunate string of events showing that, with the proper medicinal or psychiatric help, he could have been calmed down and he could have gone back to a sense of normalcy after being exacerbated by the Agent Rainbow and his anger really taking off. Because when Max did in fact go back into the facility, he did not come back out.
I just want my life again. I miss my family. I failed them.
It's okay. She will always be your daughter.
This guy literally turned into a car.
You will always be her dad. Max tried to fight back and died for it. Your death won't be in vain. Thank you for leading me here.
He did not make it out of the facility, and he did in fact die while trying to get his job back. So next we're actually going to talk about a secondary character that was not one of our patients, but is in fact directly linked, and that is going to be Rosemary, or the Empty. The reason we talk about Rosemary is that we learn about Rosemary in the Quarry's facility, or in the Mare Pharmaceutical facility, during Max's tape. Rosemary was a lead research development as part of Agent Rainbow and as part of the cattle lure pills and all of the things in the pharmaceutical company. She then decided that what they're doing, because Agent Rainbow is determined to be a vital weapon of war, a psychological weapon of war. What we learn about Agent Rainbow from Rosemary's tapes and the other information we find in the Quarry is that this drug not only has a psychedelic hallucinogenic effect, but it seems to affect people in a way that allows them to connect to signals, radio signals. And the radio signals then depict certain things or bring those things to a sense of reality for these people. It's as if you step into an alternate dimension or an alternate plane that exists simultaneously with the real living world that you're in, and that is what is causing these mental breaks, because people are actually seeing things that our brains are making up because of these radio signals, basically. And so with this research, it is determined that it is a highly, dangerous and volatile drug, but it also should not be used for this. It should be used for other things. They should tap into it because there's a certain power in this, right? And so Rosemary tries to shut down the research, because after pushing for no war use, she also realized that it is actually just such a volatile, dangerous chemical compound that it should just not exist. And so then, due to her being a potential whistleblower, she is done away with by the pharmaceutical company and is killed. We do actually find her later on during Lucas' tape, and she is found in the sewers or the underground kind of area that we were trying to get through in the bunker. And in this bunker, she is depicted as this woman in like bloody clothing, which, was just showing that she was killed. But she also has this like light blue, like radio signal, and like light, almost lightning kind of just, there's a signal emitting from her. Right. I'm trying to figure out what they even look like. And she's trying to tell you the secrets and what she knows and how Agent Rainbow actually works. So it really is starting to get very fascinating at this point, because this chemical that we thought was just giving mental breakdowns or giving a psychotic break to these people who are already struggling with their certain ailments has this whole other side to it. And that is why, in fact, our protagonist is seeing monsters, because they are being conjured by the connection of these radio signals and the protagonist's brain. And it turns out that all this gas and these fumes And the rainbow-colored toxins on the floor are all, in fact, this Agent Rainbow that has just been dispersed throughout the water system now due to the USS Thanatos crashing at the beachside. And finally, unfortunately, we do find an unmarked grave that does have glasses on it in Lucas's tape. This is confirming that Rosemary was in fact killed and buried in an undisclosed location outside of one of these bunkers. And we confirm it's her because each character has a vinyl that has a song, which is actually very nice. And each of these vinyls kind of portrays, these songs portray each person's characteristics and what they went through, what happened to them. Our final tape for discussion is Lucas, aka The Flash. Lucas is a former military member and is now diagnosed with PTSD with paranoid tendencies and suspected delusional disorder. He was actually discharged from the military after asking too many questions because Agent Rainbow had been deployed on the field that he was in, and he wanted to know more about what they were doing and why they were using chemical warfare. Lucas is found to have been in contact with not only Max, who then brought him to the facility because he had a way in, he also was talking to Rosemary directly, which was one of the things that gave up Rosemary's position and eventually led to her demise because she was, in fact, in contact with people who were digging into Agent Rainbow. Lucas was the type that he went to therapy in hopes that someone would listen to him. And not in the way that you normally would with therapy. He wanted people to hear his quote-unquote conspiracy theories, right? He wanted people to hear him out and actually listen to what he's saying because he isn't crazy as he says. Lucas was the type to be gaslit and to be told that he was insane and he didn't know anything and he needed to go to a psych, right? Turns out that Lucas was right. Lucas got to the bottom of the Agent Rainbow. He had pretty much learned everything about it from Rosemary, it seems, and so he knew that Desmond had been in contact with these people who were affected by it and who died because of it, and he wanted to get with Desmond to make things right. Lucas is depicted as this towering, large, mechanical-looking person that did still have human skeletal bones, and he had a large flashlight on his head, and then also a large rifle to just kind of signify his PTSD. You know, that was his form that was taken on in his tape. I definitely believe that his personification was this due to the fact that during the hidden tapes at the end of his tape, you find more recordings about Lucas that are just his logs, you know, and that is him talking about how he did in fact kill his friend from the military in a PTSD-driven event that was exacerbated by Agent Rainbow. Oh shit! He's back!
It's okay. You're not alone. I believe you.
So Lucas has a lot of stock in figuring out what Agent Rainbow is and how to prevent it from doing any more damage. Holy shit.
Is there anybody out there? Hello? Lucas Cole, if you can hear me, this is Desmond Wales. Do you read?
Are you okay?
I'm hanging in there, but I could use your help. Can you get to my office?
I read you loud and clear, brother. Help is on the way.
Lucas is also the only confirmed survivor of these Agent Rainbow events and does in fact contact you at the end of the game. The final tape that we'll discuss is actually Desmond's. So Desmond's tape really makes a lot of sense once you get towards the end of the game because this whole time there is some antagonist, there's some voice, there's also some person that seems to be following you around, making your life worse, trying to kill you, trying to throw you off your trail. They're belittling you, they're calling you names, they're saying you're worthless, they are saying you can't do it, they're saying to stop. They're really trying to get you off track however possible they can, usually with words. And so when you step into Desmond's tape, you find the man with the hat, who then explains everything to you, that he is in fact Agent Rainbow, or he is the Agent Rainbow version of Desmond. And with this information, we finally learn that every person that was affected by Agent Rainbow, in their tapes, they were portrayed in such a way that it was the biggest injustice to the individual, right? They were portrayed in the exact opposite way that they would ever want to be seen. They were the worst version of themselves according to their own self-esteem, their own thoughts about themselves. We had Virginia first, who we called the Watcher. Always wanted to be seen as a person and not for her scars. And this may have come from the upbringing of the pageants, but it always came from she just wanted to be seen and understood as a person without someone staring at her. And so this ghost that would attack and yell and have a breakdown because of what she looked like and people looking at her, that was not who she ever wanted to be. That was who she tried to not be. That's why she went to therapy. That's why, she wanted somehow to not be that person that the accident had made her. Alan, who is the Shade, was seen as this disheveled shadow of a man that was burnt alive, and he was afraid of the light, and he wanted to stay in the darkness. And that is literally the opposite of Alan. Alan wanted to literally be a light. He wanted to work the lighthouse so other people had light. He felt as if the light was so important to him, he wanted to share it because he didn't want to be in the darkness because of his, hallucinogenic tendencies and schizophrenic tendencies. He did not want to be in the darkness. So to be depicted as a man who hid from the light, that was the opposite of Alan. Max being the bull. Max had his narcissistic tendencies. He had his explosive tendencies. He had his anger issues, right? And now, obviously, this one's a little harder to get past for some people, of course, because it's really relatable. We've all kind of met a person like that. But that's not who he wanted to be, right? He had his issues. He had his imbalances. He wanted to be steady. He wanted to be steady for his daughter, right? He wanted to be there. He wanted to be the foundation. He didn't want to just blow up and go off all the time. And so being depicted as a bull, a literal bull that just charges into everything head on to hit whatever's in front of him, that is the worst thing he could have been to himself. Lucas, right? You have this guy that is depicted as a large, towering rifleman, literally. He has PTSD. He dealt with a lot of stuff. And he, very unfortunately, in his post-traumatic event, killed his best friend from the military. So being some lumbering, violent creature that shoots on sight is the last thing Lucas wants to be. Lucas wants to be thoughtful. He wants to get to the bottom of these problems. He doesn't want to just be a towering gun. It's the last thing a person wants to be, especially with PTSD. They don't want to be a towering gun that is instilling fear. And so you get to Desmond's tape. And you find this guy. The whole time I played this game, I was like, that is my inner monologue. It has to be. It's a psychological horror game about a psychiatrist. The guy talking to you on the phone has to be you. It has to be. And it was. It was the worst version of you. It was your most disliked version of yourself. Just harboring negative. He said he hates cats. And as you know, Tanya was his cat who he loved very much. And so he was the worst version of himself. And your entire job to overcome Agent Rainbow, to overcome this chemical that is infecting your brain, is to defeat the worst version of yourself and to be the best version of yourself. And so eventually you do in fact defeat yourself despite your evil self's best efforts. You break out of your tape and you finally get to process everything that has happened. And now we get to the worst part. I know I did this to you in Ludo as well, and I'm sorry. This is how things are. This is chronological. Tanya the cat. She would be talking to you, she would be giving you advice, she would be asking you questions, she would be helping you try to process all these things. And you find some notes about Tanya that do lead you to understand why she was such a big part of this whole story. Because the cat just showed up on his doorstep like a decade ago, and he decided, yeah, sure, what the heck, I'll take this kitten. Like every tape mentioned this cat. The cat was always a part of the discussion. The cat was always around. It was in the office. I think with Max, he had to remove the cat because either he hated cats or there's an allergy, I forget which, but the cat was always there. And so later, when you get to these vinyls, And each of these vinyls kind of tells the story of each character. The cat, Tanya, actually sings along a little bit after the vinyl. Like they are shown like visibly enjoying themselves, hearing about these tapes, hearing about these people's stories. And they sing along and they bob their head and stuff. And it shows that the cat was there, right? The cat was always present. Through every issue Desmond had, the cat was always there. And Tanya was kind of, you know, used as this rebound and kind of like a grounding individual for Desmond. He'd always talk to her after sessions. He would kind of talk to her as if he, you know, so he wasn't talking to himself when he was trying to deal with his own stuff. You find tapes. Obviously, you have like Desmond's tapes and Desmond's notes on himself. Because what psychiatrists wouldn't try to shrink themselves? But Tanya was always there. Tanya was always part of the conversation. Tanya was always supporting Desmond. And then unfortunately, we do find out that Desmond had purchased some sort of lily plant, some sort of flower that Tanya got into. Unfortunately, Tanya did not make it from that exposure to the lily.
And you are powerless to stop what's coming.
Don't listen to him. He's afraid because he knows exactly what you're capable of.
What am I capable of?
Time will tell. Patience and grace.
So, this is goodbye?
You said goodbye before. I wouldn't lose any sleep on it.
I'm sorry. It was my fault. I should have known.
You did your best. You loved me, and that's all I ever cared about. Besides, I live on. In your head, so that's something.
Thank you, Tanya. For everything. You're a real cool cat.
Yeah. I know.
Damn! So at the end, we learn that Virginia died from glass. Alan died from light, from fire. Max died as a result of his anger issue. And he had an explosive episode. He went to that job site and he didn't come back. Lucas is still alive. He is still in the thick of it. He's still trying to figure it out. Desmond made it out, but not unscathed, because he did lose his cat and all of his patients. So you're left at the end with Desmond trying to figure out what's next, and Lucas contacts you finally, because you try to contact Lucas at the end of your tape, right at the end of his tape. Actually, he tries to contact him, and Lucas says that he heard him somehow in the back of his head, thus showing Agent Rainbow's radio signal effect actually takes place. It really does leave you with kind of a fascinating open-ended end to the story. I don't think there's going to be any sort of sequel, but it was fascinating. Very, very interesting take on a psychological horror game. Very interesting take on some government conspiracies. So it seems that to fight off the government, we have to first conquer ourselves and our inner voices and learn to persevere. But on the flip side, it also seems that we may have to fight the government before we can be the version of ourselves that we like the most. That best version of us that we truly want to be.
Myron and the government think they have...
Oh, I'm recording this time. Yeah.
That they can shove us around and we'll take it. They fail to realize that by pushing a bird out of its nest, you teach it to fly.
Food for thought. If you enjoyed this, definitely drop a comment on the video, and I will be back on the next one.